So it seems separation anxiety driven cuddling and peeing. Is that correct?
Yes, like we're putting them, so the oldest, that's Charlie, who you read about, he's the oldest. He's always peed in the house.
Sit down.
Okay.
And we've let him get away with it, so we put diapers on him when we leave.
Okay.
The oldest one here, and so the two biggest belong to him, the two smallest belong to her, but we've all lived together maybe 60% of their lives.
Okay.
So they've lived with each other.
Sure.
Carter is gonna be 12?
Sit down.
11.
11, and Mac is 7, gonna be 7, he's 7, it's about the right ages.
Okay.
He, who doesn't pee in the house, we locked everybody else up thinking he wouldn't be a problem, and he's a problem too. Alex thinks that part of that is because now they've marked the house, so therefore there's pee smells,
Yeah.
and that doesn't help,
Yeah.
right?
That was the
So,
first thing I thought.
okay, so Mac is the black one. Has separation anxiety even when things are normal. Like, when things were normal, we had to get him used to us leaving, but he's the kid who would go pull down the garbage, and, you know, he doesn't like it when we leave. His safest place is the cage.
Okay.
So we pulled the cage back out.
Sure.
The cage has been away for a year, we pulled the cage back out. But we're reluctant to be in a situation where they're caged all the time, and we're gonna be leaving more.
Oh, for like work and stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm actually moving to Detroit,
Okay.
so,
So the dogs are gonna be staying with you guys?
Yeah.
Okay. So the primary concern is just trying to get this whole peeing thing under control?
Yeah.
yes,
Exactly.
All right. So we got Charlie who's done it forever
Mhm.
yes,
and wears a diaper, so kind of like a block cause kind of thing, right?
yeah,
Then we got 11 years old and then 2 7-year-olds.
correct.
Okay. He looks good for 11.
Looks very good.
Yeah.
Very
Um,
good.
In my pit, she's starting to get white like this one here, but on the black dogs, even it's much more noticeable.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
she's
Everybody
blue.
thinks he's the only
Everybody
one.
thinks,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And
But
he's
he
the
looks
spring
good.
chicken, right?
Um, so, all right, so this case is interesting, because other than that, you really don't. It's like,
Well, we have other, like, you know, they don't listen to us, they run to the doors and, you know, bark their heads off.
Okay.
There's other smaller things that,
sure,
in a perfect world, we'd love to, but that's the big worry.
okay. So, obedience-wise, is there anything you need for these dogs to do? These two, I'm kind of like, well, they're old. That's all my whole mindset is on that.
He's very stubborn.
Mhm.
So like when you walk him, if he wants to go that way and you want to go that way, it's a little bit of a war for you
Okay.
to be the alpha, but,
Okay.
you know, so you have to be strong when you walk him.
Okay,
They just, as a pack, I think that would be the only thing we'd have to say. As a pack, they, you know, they're all aggressive at the same time. They can kill you if they're all, you know, they sit around on couches with us and all that stuff. They sleep under covers with us. We're very non-traditional, right?
Mhm.
Like, and then the doorbell rings and they kill our arms and kill our legs because they're all running and screaming, and Charlie's biting Carter and Mac on their way to the front door,
Mhm.
right? That's probably the biggest behavioral thing. Everything else is kind of whatever. Yes?
Yeah.
Or you
I
don't
mean, it's
think
really
so at
just,
all?
it just feels like it's the pee at this point. Like, I mean, all the other stuff is stuff that, I mean, unless we're all willing to like really dedicate to behavioral changes, I would say, like
Mhm.
every single time. I don't think it's the, you know, it's not something
Do you agree with that?
that like, I feel like we're gonna change,
okay.
you know,
The door
overnight.
thing is not okay.
That's the only
It's-
thing that
I
drives us
have-
crazy. They
I
jump
have
on
blood.
people.
I have
Yeah.
blood from the scratches. I get worried for Charlie because Charlie freaks out and bites Carter, and Carter is annoyed, and when, you know, he snaps back, but he doesn't hurt Charlie.
Yeah.
But it's
That's
nerve-wracking
been going on
anyway.
forever, and then, you know,
And
they're
it's
fine.
like you
They're-
can't get control, it's just so
And
much working.
she's home with them primarily.
And it's anything, like someone doesn't even have to be at the door. If they hear a noise, they go nuts, and it's like, I just can't live with it.
So that's the only thing from our perspective, and Callie and I've been with the dogs more so. Alex is kind of dividing his time and he's out working all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm gonna be there even less. So that's the behavioral thing.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else is kind of fine. That's the behavioral thing that
The
drives
pee
us
thing is,
crazy.
the pee thing is bad too, and they pee a lot in my room.
Come on, sucks.
Yeah, yeah. My room's on the first floor, it's the easy punishment room, so I've lost a lot of time to cleaning up pee.
Sure.
So those are our two things.
Okay, so when I look at a case like, so did you guys do research on me, like how I train and everything like that? And
Yes,
and
I
everything,
did.
right?
I don't know if they did, but like.
Sure, like I used to eat collar and prong collar and stuff.
Mhm.
So when it comes to like peeing mistakes and stuff, like not really necessary because it's not so much obedience training or anything like that. It's just trying to get to the root of the issue or trying to find a solution. Me, I really don't care what the solution is as long as there's a solution. It's usually the owner that cares. Okay. So the first thing I think about, because I'm gonna do kind of half of a consult and half of like here's the answer because it's kind of just for me very simple that I don't see you paying $1,000+ for potty issues.
Training.
Does that make sense?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So the door thing is fairly simple too. It does take consistency, but it's not like a lot of work. Okay. So with the potty stuff. First thing when I was reading through everything, I'm like, well, it sounds like this guy has left his scent all over the place, and then now when you guys leave, like they're just like whatever, whether it's spiteful or doing it to mark or under stress or all that stuff. Essentially, since it's been unchecked with one in particular, now it's kind of led to a bigger problem. Okay, so I don't care if I have to kennel the dogs again,
Right.
personally.
Okay.
Now, you said they might have to be kenneled for a long time. Is that like an 8-hour day, a 16-hour day?
No.
How long is that day?
Not that long.
I think it depends. I don't think any of us are probably gone longer than 4 or 5
Oh, yeah,
or
it's
6
not-
hours.
Yeah, my dog's back, in the beginning, because I work as much as 12 to 13 hours a day.
Yeah,
And there was a point where my pit, I've had her for 8 years, and, dogs are dogs,
Right.
and she's very well trained and stuff, but in 8 years, like about a handful of times, she's randomly destroyed something.
Right.
5 times in 8 years, no big deal. But after she's destroyed something, I usually gone back to the kennel just to kind of restructure her
right,
for a few weeks. But then she'd be in the kennel for 13 hours.
right.
But I'd come home and I'd open it, she'd come out, take her to go pee, and then we'd go back to her schedule. Right? And I didn't care that she was in the kennel for 13 hours, but if she didn't chew up my $350 pair of Italian shoes,
Right.
she wouldn't be in that kennel in the first place. Okay?
Right.
So of course she doesn't think that way. So now,
Right.
she said whatever, she's not being spiteful or anything like that. But yeah, the first thing I thought was like, all right, well we got to go back to the basics, which is just potty training stuff, right? Now, people are the ones that typically care about like, oh, but I feel bad because the dog's in the cage. I'm like, but dogs are denning animals.
Right.
For a lot of dogs, the cage is their safe zone.
For him, for sure.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
So, if even the little one here, if they can't handle being free, then they don't get that privilege.
Right.
I look at dogs as like kind of 3 to 4-year-old kids. They earn the things that they can do within the home.
Okay,
But most people tend to just give it to them,
right,
right? But then when we end up with issues like this, and then we fast forward, and then pandemic happens, and being home all the time throws everything off, right? I've had several people have separation anxiety issues because of the pandemic. I've had dogs that I trained where my clients are reaching out, they're saying, Jess, I've been working from home for the last 3 months. I just went back to my office. Now the dog is howling when I'm gone. I'm like, yeah, because they got used to being there 24/7 for the last 3 months. That's
Right.
now the new norm.
right.
And everybody thought it was great because I get to spend all day with my dog until these things
That's
happen.
right. Oh, I knew this was gonna happen. I
The
knew it
first
was
thing,
coming.
yeah, the first thing I told everybody when it first hit, that was coming to me, like my new puppy owners and stuff, I was like, what's your schedule on a normal day? They're like, I'd normally be at work 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And I would tell them 9 to 5, crate or kennel your puppy or dog
Wow.
in a different room, even though you're home.
Yeah,
They're like, oh, but I'm home and I'm like, I know that, but that's gonna cause this problem.
right.
So I'm like, you're still home, but you're creating or forcing separation. So when you go back to work, the only difference is you're gone now, but the dog is still in the kennel. So there's a sense of familiarity, but there's also that difference of now the owner's gone, but no big deal because I'm always in there anyways.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
So what I would do is, one, we want to foresee what is our schedule going to look like, right? Because you're working a lot, you're going to be leaving, and then, I'm sorry, you currently working?
I'll be going to school in January.
Okay, you'll be going to school.
Like night classes.
Night classes, gotcha. So, and then what would you do during the day, like just homework and be at home?
Potentially be at home, potentially a part-time job.
Okay,
Yeah.
and then is your schedule like consistent, like a 9 to 5, or is it?
I'm flexible. Right now I'm just driving for Uber, so.
Gotcha.
Like
Okay.
I can be, in and out. I mean, typically it's from
So
like
we're
5:30
over-
to like, noon, and then I come back for lunch, and then I'll be out from, 1 to 6 or 7. so-
Gotcha.
But it's
Gotcha.
flexible,
Okay,
yeah.
But it also means we're erratic.
sure.
Yeah.
If possible, and I get it, I Ubered when I first started my business, because,
Yeah.
I had to do a lot of things to, start
Yeah,
things.
for sure.
Is, if we just kind of try to create a consistency, okay? That's the first step, is always just some kind of consistency. The great thing is, we're humans, and we can be proactive about these things, to make these decisions, okay? So you're 5:30 to 1, and then 5:30 to noon, and 1 to 6, kind of, right? That's a really long day. Being a carhead.
Yeah.
Is trying to think here. So you start your day, and then what I would do, like, are the dogs split up, like, how do you say, responsibility wise? Like, do you take out your 2 and then you take out the other 2?
They've been handling the bulk of all 4 dogs.
Yeah, I usually take them out in the morning, first thing, all 4.
Okay.
And
I think we have
Hallie
to
will probably
plan.
let them out during the day.
Probably have to plan for just Hallie and I being here, because you're gonna be gone soon.
Yeah,
During the
that's gonna be
week,
the
so
another
we
thing.
don't
I wanna
want
like get
weekends,
into
but
a
yeah.
routine where you're not involved.
Exactly.
Yes.
So it's really about Hallie and I, and we're gonna divvy it up, now that she's, she's, man down, I'm gonna obviously step in and help
Sure.
Hallie out, because they, afford a lot.
Okay.
So.
Do you guys have an access to a yard, or is it you
We
take them out
take
for
them
a
out in
walk?
the alley.
Okay.
I take them for longer walks sometimes,
Mhm.
but they're in the alley out back,
Okay.
a lot.
Okay. Are you guys like an apartment condo type building, or?
We're in a townhouse.
Townhouse,
Yeah.
gotcha. I'm just trying to figure out what the ease is of taking out 4 dogs,
Well, so for me, when I walk them, like, I can walk all 4, but it's a little bit of a war, right? Because, and I don't mind doing it, but I don't do it all the time, but it's easier to do 2 and 2, right? When you take him, he's stubborn, so he pulls.
Mhm.
These 2 actually could be off leash, because we don't, because everybody and their dogs is out now. But these 2 are very mindful,
Mhm.
and, he couldn't, he's fine, he's littler, right?
Sure.
But they all have different purposes. When you actually walk 4 of them on a leash.
Sure.
When we take them out back, they're off leash, and we let them
Oh,
wander down the
yeah.
alley
Sure.
with us. They're generally pretty good at listening.
Okay.
There's a finite place where they can go. We corral them a little bit, and it gives them some freedom.
Okay. So what I would do is, if you're thinking like kind of like a 9 to 5 type of day, you can adjust it as you see fit for your schedule in the future, is I wouldn't worry about you doing the morning because you wake up at 5:30 or whatever to start your day.
Right.
Is maybe she does the morning, and then when you come back for noon, you do the noon outing,
Right.
and then maybe before you would head out, like let's say your school night would start at 6, maybe before you leave at 5, you take them out, and then you finish
Have
your
the night shift and all that.
6, yeah, and then you're home for the
For dinner and
evening.
all that, yeah.
And I would keep the guys that can't be trusted just in the kennel, because that would be just an 8-hour day, essentially, which is standard. That's what most people do, is like a 9 to 5. And I always, it's up to the client. I always tell people, like when I have puppies, they'll have like 3 dog walkers come, right? Because they're puppy and all that stuff. I'm like, yeah, but are you gonna do this forever? And they go, well, no. I'm like, well, then I wouldn't do it now. Because you're training your puppy or for a
expect
dog to
somebody.
expect 3 times a day just to be a dog walker.
Right.
So what I'll tell them to do is to have a dog walker midday until the puppy is 6 months. And then there's gonna be potty mistakes, but I'm training their puppy to be able to be in the kennel for up to 8 hours, holding the bathroom. Like my guys are 12 to 13 hours. They'll hold it for 24 hours or more. Not in the kennel, but like if it's raining, they hate going out in this weather. They'd rather just sleep and not do anything.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay?
Right,
So I know they're capable of it.
right.
And then right at 6 months, I'll tell them, remove your dog walker if you want, unless you're gonna keep your dog walker forever, because when your dog is 2 years old and you decide no more dog walker, they're used to peeing and pooping at noon.
Right.
Now you've created a 2-year habit, that's gonna be a problem.
Right.
Okay? So think about, what you would want your life to look like going forward.
Mhm.
Don't worry about the dogs.
Mhm.
They'll adapt,
Mhm.
okay? The only exception would be like, let's say for the older guys, like my stepdad, he had like 6 border collies, a bunch of them passed recently, but, once they got really old, they couldn't hold it reliably. Like they were, using sort of the kennel, all that stuff, but he's just like, they're old, it's just life now,
Right.
He can hold it.
Sure, yeah. No, he looks good, and he's young enough that he can still hold
Yeah.
it, but once you start to get up there in the
Right,
years,
okay.
if you start to see that happening in the kennel, like it is what it is, it's just,
If he's in the kennel, it's more about age than it is intent.
right,
Okay.
right. And like, let's say we go to that kennel, right, and you guys are leaving, and even if you're gonna be home and stuff, maybe he starts like throwing a fit in the kennel and everything, then we gotta start thinking about correcting behaviors, okay? Which, I'm gonna talk about it, and I'll send you some videos. Please email, because I'm booked all day, that I'll forget, is afterwards,
I'll
email
give you
Maria.
a follow-up.
Yeah, and then tell her Jess said he's gonna send some videos, and I'll forward them to you, okay?
Okay.
So, the correcting any kind of bark in the kennel, stuff like that, because if, we're gonna take kind of a step back to potty training, but at the
Yeah.
same time setting up the routine.
Right,
Is, if I put him in a kennel, and I know he's capable of holding it for a full day, and 2 hours in, he soils the kennel, and he's barking like, hey, I soiled the kennel. I don't take him out and I don't clean him up.
right,
I leave him in there until the next outing. That's what I
right.
do with all my puppies. That's why my puppies potty train so quick,
Mhm.
because it's against instinct to soil themselves or to
And
soil
sit in
the
it.
place, exactly.
Right.
So if I put him in at 8 and at 10 o'clock he soiled it, and his next outing isn't until 1, he's in there for another 3 hours, okay?
Right.
Now, the sucky part of this is, of course, when you go to take them out at 1, now you have a dog that's cleaned up, okay?
Right.
Which is why I always do this with their puppies,
Mhm.
so I avoid that problem. But that's gonna be, there's gotta be some work, unfortunately, it's not gonna be easy.
Right,
But if you're really strict about it, it's gonna progress the process faster, okay? If you try to dance around it, and you're like, oh crap, he soiled, I'm gonna just clean it up and clean them up, because it's easier than if you like sat on it or something like that, you're just making more work for yourself. Because I want him to sit next to that poop or that puddle of pee and go like, that's disgusting, I really shouldn't do that.
right,
And then we should start to see that deter the behavior, okay? But he has to be with it. Because I've had dogs learn in the past, if I soil the kennel, and I bark, my owner will come, pull me out, clean me up, clean the kennel, and then I'm free,
right,
okay? And then they learn nothing and we never get over any issues,
right,
okay?
okay.
So if he starts barking in the kennel, I go, oh, I get it, like, sure. Go eat.
He's laying down on
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like use him as a chin rest.
Yeah.
Yeah, he says a lot of things as a children.
If he starts barking in the kennel, technically he's valid. Hey, my kennel's dirty, someone let me out of here, right? But then I'm like, well, I'm trying to prove a point here. Is the easiest way to correct dogs that doesn't require you to invest in like a $300, $400 collar is what we call a bonker. Okay, it's just a rolled up towel, and you can use hair bands or rubber bands to keep it shaped so it's firm but a soft surface. Okay, so if one dog is correcting another dog, you know what that looks like?
Mhm.
No.
No, you never seen dogs correct each other?
In
You
what way?
actually, what happens with Charlie and this guy?
Charlie's trying to correct him. Charlie's going after him.
And what does that look like?
He's biting him.
He's biting his tush as they're running.
Yeah, the biting.
Right.
Okay.
That's how dogs correct each
Right,
other.
right, right.
Okay.
Okay, they use physicality. Now Charlie's a little guy,
Yeah.
and then you said, what's his name?
Carter.
Carter, and then Carter goes, "Ah," right? And
He
like,
doesn't bite him, but he's
But
like,
he's
leave
telling
me
him, like,
alone.
back off.
Well, mostly he ignores him, but every once in a while, like, he's had it. He's
right,
like, leave me
and
alone.
he's using the threat of
Yeah.
physicality to say back off, right?
Right.
And clearly he's not learning because he keeps repeating,
Mhm.
okay? Because he's actually not making contact with him. That's
Right.
why he doesn't stop.
Right.
So
He
he's
does
like-
that. They do it. They're
Hmm.
more physical with each other.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that physicality is how dogs address each other. So the bonker, that rolled up towel, is your means to correct them. Okay, and this is actually the same thing you can use for the front door. So one way that we do it with puppies in the beginning is, since they're puppies and they tend to be softer personality types, is they bark in the kennel, we just bonk the kennel. And then it'll spook them. Okay, and then people worry about, well, does this make the kennel a bad place? And I go, no, because it's momentary.
Mhm.
In order to make something a negative, you have to make the entire experience within the kennel negative. And then when the dog is out, everything's fine. So they go, I never want to go in there because that's a really bad place, right? So, but if it's momentary, and if it's when the dog barks and only when they bark, then they go, oh, well, if I'm in here and I'm in here and I'm quiet, nothing happens. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah, so people worry about that too much. And I go, dogs bite each other. Like, it's just a
Right.
roll of towel, bang them inside of the kennel, like, who cares? And if we see that doesn't deter the behavior, okay? Then when you go to open the gate or the kennel door, sometimes the dogs will try to forge out.
Yes.
So like, this sucks.
Yes,
You can correct that. But here you'd be physically bonking the dog yourself, okay? So
okay,
people would say, I'm hitting my dog. It's all about the words. There's hitting and then there's correcting,
right,
okay? I was spanked growing up, okay? You could see that as my mom hit me, right? But I go like, my mom spanked me.
right,
My mom corrected me, right? And it was in response to something that I did that I wasn't supposed to
right.
deter a behavior.
Well, what happens when you have 4 of them? Because that's the trouble. It's
Yes.
easier when it's 1.
Yes.
You've got 4.
Yes.
So they feed on each other.
Yes, you go
Yeah.
for the biggest energy. You go for the loudest one. So if he's the one that triggers it, even though he's the smallest, because I have a client right now, they have 7 dogs.
Stop
Okay?
it.
With the same issue at the front door.
Okay.
And I told them, you always go for the biggest energy, because that's typically the leader.
But they get
Okay.
away so fast.
Yes, so,
They take off.
yep. So what I would do is block off as much as I can, close doors and stuff. If there's a stairway, like that goes upstairs or something, put a dog gate up,
Growling.
and you're limiting where they can go, so that you can get those corrections in.
Right,
Okay, so first you target the biggest energy. Once the biggest energy chills out, then I go, who's left? And you should hear an audible difference of like, wow, that really cut down the situation. Because when you got him feeding into him, feeding into him, feeding into him, it's a circus,
yeah,
right? So once you take out the ringleader, then it's like, who's the second one, right? And then you take out the second one, and the other ones are kind of sitting there like, okay, well, what happened? It's like with humans.
right,
Right? They go for the leader. You take down the leader, you essentially take down the whole group, unless another leader rises.
Right.
Okay? Same
Okay.
thing for dogs. Okay? So if we go back to the kennel, I've gone to the kennel a few times. There's no shouting, there's no screaming, there's no shut up. The moment I hear the first bark in the kennel, I go to correct. People tend to wait to see if the dog will resolve it themselves. I don't do that. I make them resolve it. Okay? So now it's on my terms. If you put it on their terms, you might get 15 minutes of barking before they shut up.
right,
Okay, and that 15 minutes of barking could be 20, to 25, you know, because they're older. They're
Right.
used to life being a certain way, so there's
Right.
gonna be some protest.
right,
Okay, so if I bonk the kennel and I walk away and they bark again, I try it again, I walk away, they bark again, I try again. By the 3rd time, if I don't see a change, I escalate to like, okay, I'm gonna open the gate, dog has to come out, correct the dog myself, physically.
Okay.
And the videos that I'll send you will show you a trainer actively correcting a dog, and it's forceful.
okay,
And then when people see it, they're like, oh my God, that's terrible. And I'm like, dogs bite each other.
right,
It's a fucking roll of towel.
yeah,
Right? And because the whole treat thing isn't gonna work here. Okay? It's about getting them to just learn that there are no longer rights, there are privileges.
okay.
Okay? Dogs have privileges, they don't have rights. Humans have rights.
And
Right?
then do you wait after a period of time and then see what they do? Or is it just you permanently cage them for the rest of their lives? I mean,
You need to create, so if you're trying to go back to like a normalcy of the dogs being loose,
Yeah,
you're looking at a few months of consistent confinement,
okay,
and then you start to ease up and maybe giving them an hour here, an hour there, right? But then in some cases, the dogs just can't handle it.
right,
Because you don't have one dog, like you said, you
Yeah.
have 4 dogs, and
right,
they feed into each other.
Right.
That's the biggest problem that you're gonna have.
right,
Is let's say you start off with one and they're great, but the moment you let the other one, now all of a sudden they're peeing again. Because
Right.
the 2 together feed into each other.
right.
Also, and I've had them too a few times, like in New York City, and I've lived in Las Vegas, and when I've had them, they've never peed in the house.
Mhm.
And so, but it is when they get around Charlie in environments where there's already pee
Sure.
that exists,
Sure.
then they start to act up.
And everybody's fixed here, right?
Everybody's
Yes,
fixed.
everybody's
Yeah.
fixed.
Yeah, so it's just the instinct of the scent and stuff.
Well, I had my girlfriend's dog who never pees at all in the house either, and she came over to our house, and within the first day, he started randomly
He wanted
lifting
to
his
mark.
leg, and it was like, okay, well, like, and he never does that.
Is there a
It's like-
cleaning service that you use that
I mean,
can get rid of
With like
that?
hardwood floors or
Both,
hardwood and carpet,
Yeah,
I mean, dogs have a really, really strong sense of smell. You can try like a Stanley steamer and
I
then,
tried,
you know,
they don't do anything.
um,
So you don't have anybody that you know that it's like, do this?
yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately not.
Okay.
You know, just because dogs' noses are so powerful, and if it's been years of urinating,
Well, the house is fairly new, so that's,
oh, okay,
there's
okay.
not that
That's a
much
plus.
urination in the house.
Okay.
But there's enough where I think it's seeped into certain areas, because you can tell they go back to that same spot, like the basket.
Sure,
Yeah.
You know, it's like they target that every time.
sure.
So I can clean the basket and move the basket away from there, so it's.
I would just,
not-
I mean, I'll say get rid of it, 'cause I'm not sure if there's any meaning to that basket, but, you know,
Right.
remove it, because that object most likely is gonna retain,
Right,
you know, the floor and the carpeting, a bit easier to clean up if you can catch it right off the bat.
yeah.
And maybe there's pee that you've not seen and it sat there and it's saturated, and now it's like, it's really in
It's
there.
never gonna be okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
Any areas that they frequently target, you know, I would, if there's any object there, like the basket or like a shelf or something, I'd most likely consider removing it, you know, or replacing it with a new shelf or something like that. And whenever these markings happen, this always happens when you're gone.
no,
It happens in front of you.
well, Charlie has,
Charlie always.
he's much better,
Yeah.
but, yes, there are times that he forgets you're standing there and he just walks over.
Okay, you can bonk that,
Right,
Okay,
because now you're not letting the brain go to
yeah,
that stage.
like
Yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah, okay. But you have to bonk it as if he's thinking or approaching or actively doing.
Mhm.
Okay, if he's already done it and walking away, it's too late.
okay,
He's not gonna, like the whole old school, bring him back and,
Right,
you
right.
know?
yeah,
I've had people that swear by it, and I'm like, dogs don't relate, they don't connect past,
Right.
or present to back past. So, but if you see him going to a spot, you're like, I think he's gonna do it, and even if you're not sure, bonk him anyways.
Right, right.
Make him be like, you know what, I don't like that area anymore,
Mhm.
okay?
Okay.
Otherwise, you're gonna, again, it's giving the dog the opportunity of,
Okay.
are you gonna do it or not? And the next thing you know, he starts saying, like, oh, there you go, you just lost that opportunity, okay?
so we need to have a bonker in every room.
Yeah, you'll have a few of them, okay, like a little arsenal, a little utility belt. But anything that you don't like, and not just the marking, okay? Let's look outside of like the front door and the marking stuff. Let's say like begging, jumping on the counter, jumping on you. You want to correct all these things because it's a bigger picture,
Right.
okay? One is really annoying, right, or two, that you're like, these are our problems, but really, and there's like, we don't mind this stuff because it's tolerable, but really it's everything has to be on the same page,
Okay,
okay? So as you start to correct them more and more for these littler things, we don't see the bigger things,
right,
okay? So when I do my actual training clients, like the one that just came before you, has a host of issues, and I go, I know these are our goals, but we're gonna start here first, and we're gonna just slowly expand out and start targeting other things, okay? So same thing here, yours is a little bit different because you're not doing e-collar, you're just doing what I would call standard structure within the home. Structure to people is typically like take the dog out to potty before work, you know, come home for lunch, like that's structure to humans. Structure for dogs is if you do this, I bite you,
right,
okay? That's structure for them. So
Right.
that's what you're gonna do now. If
Okay,
any
start
little thing
biting
you don't
them.
like, you're gonna start correcting it. I personally do not say no or stop or any word, okay? I just correct it. Because the way a dog brain works is, let's say he goes to go potty, and you say no, and he goes, and he stops, and he walks away, right? And you're like, oh, good, he stopped, he didn't do it. But now you always have to say no.
uh-huh,
And if you're not there to say no, you're not peeing.
right,
But if I just flail the bonker at him, and he's like, holy crap, what was that? That came out of nowhere.
Right.
He thinks, whenever he thinks about going to pee, it's an automatic thing. And the only way to avoid that is to not do it.
Right.
Okay, so for humans, you can, learn, I don't run red lights because I'll get a ticket. And you can just proactively not run red lights. Dogs don't do that. He doesn't, if you tell him, hey buddy, don't pee on the basket, he doesn't go, okay, and stop the behavior.
so unless we're biting them, they're not changing their behavior.
Correct, okay? That's how like the positive reinforcement stuff doesn't work for it like this. So positive reinforcement treats is great for stuff you want to see again. Sit, good boy, treat, right?
Mhm.
Right,
Terrible for stuff you don't want to see again,
right,
okay? So like trainers will say, if your dog isn't barking, reward them. When they're quiet, I'm like, that is the stupidest thing ever.
Right.
Just correct them when they're barking
Mhm.
and just
Right.
teach them not to bark, right? For whatever context you're
so in
working.
teaching them not, okay, here's the other thing, what if you leave the house and they're barking? How do you make them stop barking?
You get a bark collar.
So that's the best way to do that.
That'd be because if no one's home to
Correct them.
and this is kind of how it depends on the context, right? So like I get some families that have a single family home and their dog barks when they're gone, but
They don't care because nobody can hear.
right. But when I get to live in condos, apartments, it's like you have to right off the bat bark collar, right?
Okay.
So in your situation, the more consistent you can be with everything, meaning even when we're gone, you're going to be corrected, the better. Okay. Now, if you don't have the issue of somebody complaining about dogs barking when you're gone, then technically you have a gray area. But then I look at, if I ignore the barking here, what does it do with everything else? If it doesn't affect the other stuff that you're doing, I don't care. But if we're seeing it affect the stuff that we're trying to do over here, then I go, you have to go and address that with the bark collars, what have you. Okay? And we can send you info for those things. They're easy. You just size them, put it on one, see if it works. If it doesn't, put it on two, and then just live your life.
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
And that'll keep everything, again, consistent. So we got the bonker, we got correcting every little thing that you don't like, and I suggest make a list. Like everybody make a list of what they don't like that the dogs do.
Right.
And just put it on your fridge.
Okay.
And then just go like, all right, cool, what
We
can
all
we
agree to
correct?
this, right?
Boom, right, so that
Okay.
everybody's on the same page. The biggest thing that holds people back is people aren't on the same page.
Yeah,
Oh, I want the dog on the couch. I don't want the dog on the couch.
right.
Okay, so then I go, well, in between would be the dog to be on the couch when given permission,
Right.
but then has to be removed off the couch if told to do so.
Right.
Okay? But otherwise, general freedoms, like I jump on the couch whenever I want, jump on the bed whenever I want, I bark at this whenever I want, leads to the other impulsive behaviors. Okay? Does that make sense so far?
Totally.
When it comes to the front door, because you have 4 dogs, it would be easiest if you isolate first. Okay? So if you feel like the little guy here is the leader, I put these guys away, and I ring the doorbell, I knock on the door, let him blow up by himself. Correct him, okay? And then repeat. This is gonna take a couple of days. And then you might find when someone knocks, he'll bark, but he's kind of hesitant, and there's gonna be more to it, and again, I'll send you a video for this. And once you addressed him, then I move on to who I believe is the second loudest. Address them, okay? So this might take you a week to 2 weeks, depending on how often you can repeat it. And then once you've done each dog individually, then you go into the group. Because now everybody's got an idea of what you're doing, okay? So you have a foundation. Otherwise, if you try to do them all at once,
Yeah.
it's gonna be chaotic.
Yeah, I tried that, and
Yeah,
it's like,
it's gonna be
it's
chaotic.
hard.
So,
Like,
and then you might find when you put them all 4 together, it's harder. So then I go, okay, well, if it's too hard to do 4 together after you've done them individually, then put them in pairs. Put the 2 littles, the 2 bigs, then I put like this guy and Carter over here, because I know there's that nipping
Right.
behavior, and then I pair these 2 together. So it's a little bit more work.
it's
And
practice.
exactly, but it's not anything like obedience training. Obedience training, you have to teach, and you have to reinforce, and you have to kind of like on a regular basis work with the dog. This stuff, you can just set up, hey, do we have the time to do this today? And you just do it. The thing about corrections is it's much easier and faster to teach a dog what not to do than it is what to do. They're not meant to heel and sit and down and come by genetic code, but they themselves do teach each other what they allow and what they don't allow. They bite each other. So once you go into like, hey, you're barking at the door, no, and you correct them, and you're like, holy crap, I don't like that. I'm not going to do that again. Okay. Now, when it comes to barking at the front door, if you're not around and someone knocks, expect them to trigger. That's actually just their job. Right? That's security.
Yeah.
I'm not against that.
Yeah.
But you want to be able to control it at least when you have Amazon, UPS, friends come over, so you don't get this chaotic mess.
Right.
Okay. So because there's a stimulus and a trigger of the door knock, the barking will always happen, but you will have a means of de-escalating it much faster. Okay, as long as you're consistent and you just do the steps necessary to get there. Okay. So I'm thinking like that's like a 2 to 3 week process for you guys with the number of dogs you have, and then just how many opportunities you're going to have in order to like practice that. Okay. Questions about any of this so far?
I don't think so. getting the right towels, wrapping them and rubber banding them and having enough around the house.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, have, wherever the problem areas are, might have a few in your room if that's where they're always going to potty and
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
Right.
You know, there's also, I'm not sure if this would be applicable to you, but there's something called a scat mat. Have you heard of that?
So is that the one, like when you step on it? Yeah. I
Yeah,
have
it
two
doesn't
of
shock
those.
them, but it's,
I have two of those because I had two couches. I was like, you cannot go on these.
sure, like
And
you
it's
can,
amazing how it works. They do it once and they never go near that couch again.
right, so
Scares them.
physicality, because
Yeah.
that's what that is, it's an uncomfortable situation,
Yeah.
right? So maybe you could put that, I'm assuming your room has a door?
Yeah.
It does? Because that's another thing of if you don't want, because
Oh, you can put a scat mat down so.
To block the
where you
door.
don't want them. to-
yeah, unless you invite them in. So I'm not opposed to
Right.
being in your room, but obviously if they're in your room without you being there, there's most likely gonna be something, right?
Yeah, the only part about that I have trouble with is that's Henry's, like, safe place.
Mhm.
And
Does he be in the
so,
room?
I think it's more Mac and Charlie that
Okay.
clean my room.
Sure,
I don't think he does it.
Sure.
It's his safe place, and he goes there to, like,
He goes there to go,
Hide
even
out.
if we're sitting upstairs, he's
he
like,
just
I'm
wants to
gonna
go to his
bed
room
now.
and go to bed.
And he
Okay.
goes,
So I have trouble closing my door, because I don't wanna, like, so sometimes I've walked downstairs if I've closed my door, and he's sleeping by my door, because he
Okay.
just wants to go inside.
sure. So you can do a couple things. Put the scat mat down, take each of these dogs individually on a leash, walk them onto the scat mat, intentionally, okay? So that they learn, like, oh crap. And then do that a few times over the course of a couple of days and remove it when you're done, so that he doesn't get it. So he'll walk over thinking, I'm cool. When these guys will think, scat mat.
yeah,
And
you
they'll
can
deter
leave the
them.
scat mat there and turn it off, right? So they'll think,
Oh yeah, that's another thing too, because
Yeah.
visually they know what it is, but he won't, because if he's not had that experience, it's not gonna apply to him.
Right.
Okay? Otherwise, you can't have your cake and eat it too.
Right.
right,
That's just like, especially when you're dealing with animals.
right.
So it's like, oh crap, well, sucks that he can't have access to my room, or we risk the dog's urinating, you know?
Right.
So, that's how I look at that. But I would try the scat mat thing first,
Okay,
okay? See what that helps fix, and you can use that for any other maybe really highly trafficked rooms that like are targets for them. I just remove them off the spaces that they're allowed into, because again, privilege. You can't be in there without peeing and stuff like that, you can't be in there.
right,
And you can do it specific to the dogs, it just means you're gonna have to do more work,
right,
right? So if you just remove the rooms with certain areas to all dogs, it's consistent, as opposed to, well, this
Yeah.
guy can go here, this guy can't, and this guy can go over here. That's things a little bit more confusing.
yeah,
Okay, but yeah, that's good. So I would utilize that scat mat to your advantage.
okay,
Let me think here. The potty stuff, going back to the kennel, creating some kind of 9 to 5 schedule. Think about what you want to do long term, right? Would you want to put a walk in the midday or what have you? Correcting when they potty in the kennel. Controlling water intake. Do you guys, is it free water, I'm assuming?
yeah, they don't seem to drink enough,
Okay.
so, yeah,
Do they eat kibble? Do they eat raw?
raw,
They eat raw. That's probably why they don't drink a lot of water, because they get
they
the
don't need
water
it, there's
from
not a lot
the.
of sodium and stuff.
Yeah, okay. So, let me think. I'm probably gonna put you in touch with Maddie. She'll give you she's my nutrition specialist. Her specialty is raw.
Okay,
Just to make sure that you're feeding the appropriate raw, and to make sure that, in terms of like the water intake and stuff like that, because that's another thing that I look into whenever potty training,
okay,
is if I'm getting a dog that pees a lot, whether it's marking, anxiety-based, or just
Right.
potty training issues, the first thing I always jump to, aside from schedule, is water intake, right?
okay,
So I would have you just type up whatever you feed them, like a general idea of like, this is usually what
it's
they
very
eat.
easy, yeah,
And then send it to her, and she can look at it and then kind of tell like, okay, maybe there's too much moisture here or whatever, and
okay,
try to balance it out more. Otherwise, I would pull up water now,
okay.
and do they share a bowl, or
Yes.
they do? Okay,
But we have different bowls in different places, because we have a 4-story townhouse,
gotcha.
yeah,
What I would do is put water at a certain time, okay? And I'd probably just do whatever's easiest to you in one spot, maybe one spot for bowls, and they go, this is our time to get our water, and then I put it up and they don't get it until like maybe lunch, then I put it up and they don't get any more until 7 o'clock, and then they put it up and they're done for the night. That's what I do with puppies,
Right.
okay? And then the general rule of thumb, so like let's say you decide to do a bowl for each dog, okay? Is an ounce of water per pound. So this guy is 12 pounds,
Yeah,
yep, 12 ounces of water a day is technically what you're looking at. So
Okay.
4 ounces in the morning, 4 ounces in the afternoon, 4 ounces in the evening, and then you're done, okay?
Okay.
Doesn't mean he's gonna drink all 12 ounces, that's just a general rule of thumb,
okay, got
okay?
it.
They, like you said, they're probably gonna drink less because they are raw fed. And then we see if that helps with the potty training or the, you know, the peeing stuff as well, okay? In terms of the anxiety, the attachment stuff, the bonking and correcting is actually what should help with that,
Right,
okay?
okay,
So it's kind of like, by you asserting yourself and when, like growing up, my mom was boss, because she spanked me, right?
right,
I have 2 brothers and a sister. I couldn't spank them, because I'm
right.
not the boss.
You get in trouble.
Yeah, exactly. Mom would do that, right?
Yeah,
So same thing for the dogs. If you're correcting them, essentially you're saying we are the authorities, right? And if you're the authority, it starts to put them in a different state that they technically shouldn't get worked up when you leave, because they were like, well, you're a boss. You leave whenever you want, right? So like my mom, she could go to the store or whatever she wanted at any point, but I couldn't,
right,
right? Try to walk out the front door. Where are you going?
right,
Going to John's. No, you're not.
right,
You see that?
right,
So, and it's, you know, obviously they don't think to that degree, but it's that kind of, the concept of like, all right, if you're making the rules and you're correcting us, you must be the authority figure, so we really shouldn't care about what you do. We
right,
need to care about what we do, because if we don't, we get corrected and we get bumped.
right,
And we don't like those things,
Right.
okay? Now, in the beginning, it's gonna be a lot, okay? And as long as you're consistent with it, you should start to see everything dip, okay? Now, just because it dips and maybe it clears up, don't feel like you're in the clear, because then people get complacent. They're like, oh, great, the peeing stopped, and this stopped, and this stopped, and this stopped. Let's go back to giving them total freedom again. Then everything comes back, okay?
okay.
So,
What type of response do you want to see when you bonk them, and what if they forge ahead? Like, do you want to keep bonking them?
yeah, so let's scale it 1 to 10 in terms of intensity. Let's say they're going for the door,
Mm-hmm.
and you bonk them, and, you know, maybe it's like a 4,
Mm-hmm.
and they just unfazed,
Right.
still there.
You want to phase them. You want to make sure that they like understand like that's something I don't want to do again.
Correct.
Because it was.
So then I just escalate.
Right.
Okay, so in the video that I'll send you,
You'll see,
you're
and
gonna
we'll
see
see
him.
how forceful.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and all the puppy's doing is he's got a treat here, and the puppy's putting its nose to push for the treat, and he goes very firmly, no, boom. Now he says no. I'm not a fan of saying no. Remember how so think of it as if you want to eliminate a behavior, you simply correct it firmly.
So it's like being the dog whisperer. You don't, it's the actions, it's not the language.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, the energy, how you come across it. So like, let's say you like bonk them, and then you're like, oh my god, that sucked. Like you just negated your correction.
Yeah.
You know, because they're reading what comes after.
Of
So
course.
like if you're Caesar
So if
Milan.
I bonk them and then I give them a big hug, they probably.
Yes, and actually I was gonna point out right now when
Yeah.
he came over and he jumped on you and you picked him up, that's actually not a good thing,
Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
Because he just told you, pick me up,
Right,
and you did it.
Right.
yeah.
So that's leader subordinate position.
Uh,
But you see it as Charlie and he's cute and he's 12 pounds and
I
I can't
love
pick
him.
him up, okay? You love him. So like I personally don't care, right? Because
yeah.
if you go online, you'll see stuff that says, make sure you eat before your dog, you walk through the door before your dog, you don't let your dog sleep in the bed and stuff. I actually don't care about that stuff.
Right.
Because it's usually people do that stuff and then they're not correcting their dogs. The not correcting your dogs is actually the bigger problem.
Yeah.
Now, in some cases, I get a dog, let's say it's a husband and wife, and when the husband leaves, the dog will possess the bed and not allow the husband back in again. Then I'll tell them, why the hell would you let the dog get in the bed then?
Right.
Right? And it's funny because people will be like, well, we like to feel like a unit. Like, but you're not a unit because the dog doesn't let your own husband come back in the bed.
Mm.
So in my book, the dog doesn't get to be in the bed, period.
Right. Right.
Okay? Now, if you don't get issues like that, then it's not a problem.
Yeah.
Then I don't care. Okay? Because they're,
Right,
being in the bed and peeing are technically not related.
right,
I've never had a case where I told someone, to do things like that for stuff like this.
Right.
I've only ever told them like, yeah, if your dog's possessing the bed against your spouse or whatever, don't allow your dog in the bed, because clearly you can't make them like the other person coming in. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
Well,
he
like
does,
magic.
he gets territorial over all of them getting in the bed. He'll get in
Yeah.
the bed
If
and then
he's
he'll
in the
start
bed, it's
growling at
like-
all three of them, and
If they try to get on.
And you can bonk that, right?
Yeah, we do.
Now, if you bonk it, he
Mhm.
might leave the bed.
yeah,
But then that's him going like, right, okay, if I can't do this, then I'm actually not gonna be here,
that's okay.
He
Right.
does that too.
right?
Yeah.
The other thing is, you can also
If he doesn't get
flip
his
it.
way, he's out.
Sure, that's,
Yeah.
yeah, he's avoiding the problem.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the other way that is like a workaround is everybody goes up and he's last,
Yeah.
because then there's nothing to guard.
Right.
He shows up and he's like, everybody's already here.
Right.
That make sense?
Mhm.
Now, if somebody leaves and then they try to re-enter, it's gonna trigger,
Right.
okay? So I would keep that in mind and just think like whether or not, if he can't handle it, then he can't handle it. Because I know it hasn't become anything bad, right? It hasn't like
Right.
escalated to a dog going to the vet or anything like that. But you're talking to someone who's come into homes with dead dogs, and it started out like that. It
Right.
started out with, it was never an issue for the first 8 years, but now our dogs send our dogs to BDR. And I said, yeah, because those 8 years of fucking crap.
Mm.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's just
Right.
built up, like when people, what was that saying, when I was growing up, was like people going postal?
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, it's overwhelming over time, and and finally it's like, ah,
Yeah.
Right.
there it is,
Yeah.
okay? So,
And the reason I asked about the bonk thing and about the response, because I'm wondering if, in terms of just, if the purpose is to deter, right? Like, I used, you know the aerosol cans?
Yeah.
The pet corrector?
yeah,
Like, they are both petrified of it.
sure, and you could, if
You know,
that
and
still
it
works,
works, like, they are
But
like,
he's got
she's
terrible
worried because
anxiety.
she shakes.
He shakes
whereas-
like crazy.
Whereas
I
I
mean, he
see it
shakes
as
for
like,
thunder, he shakes for noise,
sure,
he just shakes
sure.
but they listen to it.
for hours.
Doesn't matter.
You don't care that he's shaking for
No.
hours?
Because, so think of it this way,
His
You have a
tail's
problem.
between his legs,
Doesn't
he
matter.
shakes.
doesn't matter. Because you gotta think of it this way,
Okay.
because you care about your dog, I understand that, right?
He just has sanctions of
Just listen to
anxiety.
him.
Okay,
I know, and it's not that I don't care about your dog,
I know.
but if you have this problem, it's either you're unhappy and your dog's doing whatever they want, or they're unhappy and you're happy. You can't have always both, right?
But if you
didn't-
do it by bonking him without making him shake, that's okay, I don't have to use
That's
the
fine,
noisy
right? But
thing.
I'm now thinking, because it's just an aerosol spray, I know exactly what you're talking about. I use it for
It's air.
puppies.
It's
Yeah,
just air.
it's just, right?
Right.
And if that spooks them, then I'm like, well, physicality is probably gonna be a step above that, because it is a step, it's steps above that, right? And yes, there's a possibility that he'll take the hit and respond to it, and you don't get the shaking. But if you care too much about how he feels, you're not gonna make progress with the other stuff, because you're gonna hold back. That's the thing.
So I should use the can and make him shake?
Use whatever you need to do to stop the
That's
behavior,
what I mean,
as
that's why I
long
was
as it's
asking
not
for
like,
deterrence. If the solution is we just want them to stop doing the behavior, then it doesn't really matter, like,
Well, but we
Look
also
at it
have
this way.
harm him, so if I'm using the can on him, because this is what happened when I was, my roommate had a Siberian Husky, so we were living together for a couple of years.
sure,
And I went to go try to use the can on her, and he didn't do anything wrong, and he's shaking. for
sure,
that.
yeah, he had the,
So he
yeah.
gets the, so that's why I don't like the idea of the can,
Sure.
right? Because you can't make it targeted.
Sure, so growing up, you know, one, I was spanked again, I
Right.
cried. Think my mom like that?
No,
But she still spanked me.
I know, but you
Then
didn't
there's
cry
other
for
times-
hours.
Oh, you don't know that, maybe you'll.
Did you?
That's why I'm so tough now. The
Yeah.
other thing is, there was times when, you know, my mom was either in an argument with my dad, or like scolding one of my other brothers or something like that, and I didn't like it. Like, even though I wasn't the target of it, I didn't like the energy of it.
Right,
But it still happened,
right.
right? I understand why you care, but I care more about the result because it's making life miserable.
I understand, but what I'm
Right.
saying is if I have a choice and I can bonk them versus use
Yeah,
the
I'm
noise
not saying
thing,
you can't use
Right.
the other thing, but
Right.
then what happens if he starts shaking for the bonking?
he's not gonna shake for the bonking.
How do you know that?
100%.
well, don't.
So you're not
yeah,
allowed to
it's
use
not-
the word 100%.
Okay, you're right, I'm not going to. He
The-
might shake for the
The
bonking.
thing, yeah, the thing is
But
like,
it's easier for him to see it and understand it
Sit
than he
down.
does the noise. He shakes when it's lightning, he shakes when it's
Yeah,
thundering, he
he's just an
shakes.
emotionally weak dog.
He is.
Yeah, so, but then
So
it's just how
that's
he
why I
is
hate
though.
to use the noise. Like, I'd rather use something that's not associated with all the other things that scares the hell out of him.
That's fine, look, if we wanna bonk him and he listens, that's fine,
Right.
right? But if he's not listening, the point is, like, we can't worry about his feelings, we need to just deter.
I agree.
So like, I'm fine with the bonking, like, we don't have to go there, I just know, that's why I brought up.
You have another-
Because I've used it before.
It's like
and
you're
it's
scared
deterrent.
shitless of marshmallows just because they're sitting there, like,
No, that's
I don't
not-
wanna use marshmallows
that's
to
not-
correct you.
You
No,
have
no.
to stop exaggerating and you have to just
Yeah.
be realistic
I am being
with your
realistic.
examples. So marshmallows is not a good example,
Okay, I know.
so.
I'll look into that as a correction.
Look at it.
Yeah, marshmallows, bonk them with marshmallows.
Right.
A towel,
No,
you
no,
know,
I'm fine
hard.
with the towel, I'm fine with doing the hard corrective action, I'm just afraid of the noise, cause
Yeah,
he's a crazy man when it comes
it's
to
been
noise.
50-50 in my career. I've
Yeah.
had dogs that were emotionally, I would call emotionally weak, thunder and all that stuff, and be tough to the physical corrections because they
Yeah.
are physical,
Yeah.
okay? And you might find he could be like the one you have to bonk the hardest, and he's unfazed by it. So then I'm like, all right, well then I use what he's weak against, and that's pet corrector.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
and it sucks, but it's like, but I need to stop this behavior.
Mhm.
And it's only while you're trying to stop it.
Yeah.
Because like, let's say all of a sudden you're like, hey, all that crap that we were dealing with stopped.
Right.
As soon as you start using the pet corrector consistently, now you don't even have to do it anymore. You know, technically.
Okay,
You see what I'm saying?
okay.
So, and going forward, like I said, it's gonna be a lot in the beginning. And then, everything's gonna dip down.
Right.
Okay, that's how it should progress. If you feel like things are escalating or things are staying static, something's not right. Okay, and then you can set up a Zoom or something like that. So we can talk about like what's
Okay.
going on, because typically, the most common thing is, Jesse, I'm bonking my dog. Show me. Boop.
Yeah, yeah.
That is not
Oh,
a
yeah,
bonk.
no, we don't have any problem
Yeah,
with
we want-
doing the right bonking. We
Yeah.
will not have a problem with that.
And when it comes to walking, because all that stuff makes sense, right?
Yeah.
You know, harnesses are the worst things to walk dogs on. It gives you the least amount of control. Dogs put their chest into things. You know, the horses, they put harnesses for them to pull carriages. Huskies were harnesses to pull sleds. So if you want more control in order to walk, at least like the bigs here,
Mhm.
gentle leader or prong collar.
So
Yeah,
the
I have
gentle
it.
leader for me
Yeah.
worked the best. Like
Sure.
with Snezzy, the Siberian Husky, they beat to another dog
Henry.
in my mind.
Mhm.
So we used the leader thing,
Sure.
and that was like, it was amazing how much control.
Yeah, because it's over their head.
Yeah,
Okay, because it's over their face, so if they try to pull, you can deter it, so they don't have any pulling power.
that's right.
Okay? But at least if these, you know,
He's got neck issues.
Sit down.
So the vet told us we shouldn't use anything but a harness. He's got back issues.
gotcha, okay. So he may be an exception. We
Right.
have a dog here with a collapsed trachea and all this nonsense, and I'm like, people baby the dog too much.
Yeah,
He's a mess.
yeah.
That's fine. But if you're having issues walking them as a group or whatever, and you want to make life easier,
Yeah.
gentle leader just
Gentle
gives you
leaders,
more
that's a
control.
great idea.
Or the prong collar, if you know how to
Yeah.
use it. And
Yeah,
then,
I used
you
the
know,
prong collar on both of them.
Okay.
In New York, I had it, it was great.
Sure, so you can always go back to at least for him, the other, like,
Yeah.
I'm not a vet.
No,
so I'm
that's
not
great,
gonna
but the
comment on
leader
that.
is a great idea.
And then this guy over here, like, how are they, like, are they reactive at all? Dog reactive, lunge and bark at dogs on the street?
Yeah.
No?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Sit down. Sit down.
He's 50-50.
who's more
He's
consistent?
the sweetest of all of them.
Okay, so is this the,
Carter.
He's the one, like,
Carter's
he's the
scary.
gentlest
Carter's-
thing until he'll eat the next dog. You don't
Okay.
never know if he's gonna eat the next
so you
dog.
said he's 50-50 and he's the one that's more consistent, correct?
Yeah, he'll be the
Carter.
quiet guy who like gets the dog down.
He's fine most of the time, but then he just has a problem with other male dominant dogs.
Okay.
That's his biggest issue.
So here, if you pop this guy in a prong,
Yeah.
and you just assert more control, and
Yeah.
all the stuff you're doing within the home,
Mhm.
I would say his is probably gonna dip, because he's not gonna be starting.
Right.
Okay, so
Yeah,
that's why.
together they're a
That seems
problem.
a bigger one,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because going outside, so if they're like not behaving within the home, like, why expect that they behave outside the home? Okay, so once you start applying all these corrections and then putting rules to things, possible that
We
the
get
other
gentler on the
behaviors,
other
okay? But you definitely want to, because that harness promotes reactivity.
Mm.
It creates more reactivity because of what's called opposition reflex. It's a fancy word that means when a dog feels tension, they go against it, and
Right.
it causes aggravation.
Right.
So like I did protection training many years ago. One of the things that we did was we put harnesses on like the German Shepherds or whatever, and there would be someone to antagonize, and then a person holding the dog back on the harness to piss them off. build frustration until we could create aggression, and then we would control it and train it, and then we had a protection trained dog.
That's interesting.
Okay, so people put their dogs in harnesses because, you know, they don't like the prong collar, or they don't want to choke the dog or whatever because of the trachea, which I get. But then I've had many dogs be friendly as a puppy, and then over a course of a year, walking on the harness became dog aggressive. Because every time they saw a dog, the owner was pulling them back and creating negative tension, and then just
Well,
created
it's
a problem.
interesting, because he's such a pleasure off the leash, but the minute you put that stuff on him,
Yeah.
he's harder to walk.
Yeah, because of the pressure.
Yeah.
Okay, now, if anything, for him, like, he's got a front clip
Charlie.
harness.
A front what?
He's got a front clip harness, and the
Yeah.
way that works is that's supposed to alleviate the pulling pressure that he has because it's deterring the front legs.
Mhm.
When you have it clipped from the back like that, that's what creates the full pressure on the chest, and then you get a lot of aggravation.
Right, right.
Okay, so I could consider that definitely for this guy, see how it affects this guy's behavior once you get him more under control. Otherwise, if he's got like neck issues and stuff, it kind of
It's
limits
back
what
issue.
your.
Yeah, but I can
or
do a
back
leader,
issue.
I can do a leader, gentle lead with him.
Okay, yeah, that's fine, just pop both of them gentle leaders. Whenever they blow up and become reactive, the main thing you always want to do is pull straight up, never back. People
Okay.
tend to pull back. Back escalates, up de-escalates,
Okay.
okay? Now, I wouldn't expect that that behavior would get, if it doesn't, like, with everything that you're doing, get better right off the bat. But it's probably gonna be just containment. Okay,
Right.
management, so like, okay, I can control
Yeah.
them if they go nuts, but not gonna make any progress, because then you have to correct that behavior. Now, you could bonk them, but now you gotta worry about the general public watching you bonk your dog,
Yeah.
you know, and that's a whole nother
They're
conversation.
gonna call people on us.
Yes, okay, but within the privacy of your own home, your dogs, your rules, who cares?
That's
Okay? So, any questions or concerns about what I just talked about?
Nothing, I think.
No, I think it's pretty
great.
clear, yeah.
Leash
So-
for Charlie.
Hmm.
Leash. It's our new left, our new left leg.
Oh, there, it is. I was like, where's the?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, if you're forgetting any of this stuff, you know, I put these on YouTube and stuff, so you can always come back to your actual consultation and just
Okay.
watch anything, so if anything's not clear, any disagreements or,
Yeah.
you know, the pet corrector or the
Look, Mom.
bunker.
Right, right.
You can go, that's what Jesse said.
Yeah.
And then I'll forward you those videos as well, if you don't get
Okay,
them from me.
I'll tell Maria,
Talk to Maria.
so she can remind you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because, yeah, this is fairly simple. It's just gonna be consistency. It's easy.
Mhm.
You just, you know, make those rules, and then we'll see what happens.
Right.
Okay.
And then, if you're making progress, but you hit a plateau,
Mhm.
you know, you can always set up a Zoom, and then I
Okay.
can see where you're at. And then
Okay.
that's a real quick one-off thing.
Perfect.
Here's some more information. Go off and do your thing, and if that fixes your problem and you're happy,
Mhm.
then I'm happy as well.
Okay, great. This is awesome. Thank you.
Yes.
so
You're
much.
welcome. Yeah, no.